Welcome to this week's episode of Inside the Headset presented by CoachComm. This week, we sit down with West Georgia running back coach Reid Sanders. In this conversation, Coach Sanders reflects on the moment he realized he wanted to pursue coaching, his early experiences leading a team as a young coach, and his time as a high school head coach. But first, a word from CoachComm.
Deuce left, check with me. If they're in quarters match, we're going to Pittsburgh or Ohio.
They're in zero.
Let's go Hippo, Seattle, wide choice. If we call the protection right, it's 6.
When a play call is the difference between winning and losing, your headset choice could be your most important decision. When the call counts, CoachComm is the only choice for clear, dependable communication. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
We got it, guys. Good job.
Now, let's get inside the headset with Coach Sanders.
Coach, what's happening, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. Excited about hopping on here with you, man. Had the opportunity to meet you for the first time, I guess about a few months ago at the AFCA convention, 35 on 35. Was excited to have you part of that program. We're going to talk about it at the end, but just really been keeping up with your career, and then obviously doing the bio stuff, man. You've been moved around and done a lot of cool things. So I look forward to diving into this one.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. Well, let's go ahead and get it started, man. The first question we always like to ask is, when was it that you knew you wanted to be a part of this great profession?
It was September of 2012. I was actually still playing at the time. I had 2 shoulder surgeries in 3 years, and I went and saw Dr. Andrews, did my second surgery, and I still was having issues after that. And it just came to a point that I wanted to, move on. I kind of didn't have any more tears for the actual playing the game of football. And every time I was injured, I was the player that I always wanted to stay, hang around. So, I tell everybody I'm the greatest college quarterback that never attempted to pass. I never got to play. So, I was always trying to give nuggets to the starting quarterback and help them any way I could. And, it just came to a point that I was, looking to move on. I literally went from player on like a Monday. Tuesday, I was a student assistant. And I kind of, that's kind of when I knew like this is what I really wanted to do.
Let me ask you this question here in regards to the injury thing, because I the amount of guys that have been on the podcast, over I've been saying 300 episodes, and I actually looked, and we're heading close to about 400 episodes here, and it's been at least 50 to 75 of those guys that had some type of career-ending injury or just an injury that hampered them enough to where they had to make the decision to just student assist. But prior to student assisting, when you were just injured, like you said, just kind of hanging up to the quarterback and helping him out, whoever was playing at the time, did you start to see the game in a different way at that point in time? Like, did you start to really process it differently, looking maybe from the sideline like a coach?
That was always my saving grace because, I was never a super tall guy. I feel like I could chunk it back in the day, but my brain was really what kept me around. Like, it gave me a fighting chance because I didn't have the measurables. So I always, saw the game, that way, but I really never had any aspirations to coach. But, I always wanted to be a good teammate because, like, I stepdad coached and, me, like everybody else, I wanted to make it to the NFL. But, I think I tell everybody I'm a much better coach. And it allows me to do what I ultimately wanted to do. And I always wanted to give back because I'm a son of an educator. And I just know my mom was like one of the first kind of teach for America teachers. So she always taught at low income, rough schools. And I just always knew that a lot of her students' life would be different if they just had my opportunity. So, I always wanted to give back and help kids set themselves up and set their families up. So, that's kind of how I stumbled into the profession, but it was never anything that I ever thought about doing.
Yeah. And just one other thing about your career. We typically don't talk that much about playing careers, but I thought it was pretty interesting. In 2008, you were at Charleston Southern. You went to Saddleback Community College, where is that located?
Mission Viejo, California.
Okay, in Cali. And then you end up in Southern for your last couple years of your career. Yeah, we'll hop into the podcast kind of chronologically, but I do want to ask this question. Going through that as a college player, where you literally are East Coast to West Coast, kind of back into the middle of the map when you finished at Southern, did that prepare you a little bit, at least for the kind of volatility of the profession, just moving around, taking different jobs, been around different staffs, different ideas, all that kind of stuff?
It did, because I mean, I moved a little, growing up. So, change was never an issue for me. So like I tell everybody, I was able to meet great people. So I felt like, man, people from all over the world. I'm like, well, I lived a little bit of everywhere. So it was great to experience California and then come to Louisiana, a place I had never been, and then end up spending, about 8 years there. So it was great.
Now, I got before I ask the question, I want to make sure I'm correct here, because I remember running into you, definitely a running back, quarterback, offensive skill position type of guy. But your first kind of real gig, I mean, outside of student assistant, what were you actually with the offensive line? Is that correct?
Yes, I was with the offensive line, and Coach Chennis Berry, I GA'd under him,
Oh, wow.
and it was a great experience. And that was my advice to anybody: learn from the inside out. So those 2 years in O-line room were monumental for me in my career. Probably one of the best 2 years as far as just a learning aspect, because we skilled guys, we sit and want to just draw up all these fast concepts and do this and that, but you can't protect it up front. Is another void. So I mean, and Coach Berry, you know what kind of guy he is. He held me to a high standard, and he would make me do the test that the players did. So if I turned my test in and if I was off a detail, he would come with his big red pen and like, do it again. So I can't thank him enough.
That's awesome, man. I didn't realize you were. I didn't link the time frame up, but I mean, I think we just did a podcast with him not too long ago, man. And what an amazing story. And I really love kind of with the podcast itself, where we're getting to the point where it's like his career kind of connects to yours, which is going to connect to another person that we're going to have on a podcast at some point in time. We need to like connect all these dots here. Now, you made a great point about learning that offensive line. Now, was there any eye-opening pieces as a quarterback? Because I always feel like that's probably the one guy on the field that has a great understanding what the line's doing, great understanding what the receivers are doing. How much detail, even playing quarterback, even having kind of that leg up of an early start, kind of being a student assistant, how much of it was like new to you, or things you never looked at or processed?
It was, I'd probably say about 60% of it. Like, for example, I mean, you're a quarterback, we have slide, and you got a man side and the slide side, but now the details of it. Well, if someone crosses the center face and there's a 3-back side, now we have to carry him. Like, as a quarterback, we just know if, they bring 5, we have 5 that should be picked up. Yeah. Versus now it's like, nope, well, if this person does this, it throws this person off. Maybe you get a 4-man slide. So a lot of that kind of stuff is stuff that we, at least, and I don't want to say I really didn't put a lot of emphasis on just playing quarterback. I knew the basics. All right, well, they bring a guy, the tackle should have him. But now what happens when they twist and do all that kind of stuff? So it was a real good experience for me. Because, I mean, it's easy to sit in the air conditioning and draw it on the board, but actually being able to put the pieces together and feel comfortable and understand all the details, that's the part that I really got out of being a GA for 2 years with offensive line.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, one of the things I like to ask whenever you have the opportunity to coach at your alma mater immediately, I think one of the interesting things is, and probably even for you, being that student assistant early on too, where you're probably sticking around the coaches a decent amount, still hanging out with your boys. All of a sudden you graduate, you're a GA, you have these expectations that are right along line with the rest of the coaching staff. You got these responsibilities that are there. How did you put that line in the sand and kind of say, hey, look, man, I know I was just playing Madden or NCAA. I guess NCAA went out then, but Madden or whatever with you a couple months ago, but now I'm in this position where, like, hey, I'm your coach, you got to respect me type deal. Did you have to deal with any of that? And if so, how'd you handle that?
I did, but I was fortunate. I was blessed. Like, all my teammates knew I loved football. So when I kind of transitioned, they probably helped me more than I helped myself all that time. They're like, hey, look, we know this is what you want to do. We can see your passion in it. Yeah. Like I said, when I became a student assistant, that was like August of going into my last year. So then I get promoted to GA. They saw how hard I worked at it, how many hours I was spending, and they understood, like, it was, I had to start separating myself from them. Yeah. And they helped it. Like, they saw me out somewhere, they'll send me a text, or they'd be like, all right, we're gonna go somewhere else. So I was fortunate enough to have teammates that really supported what I was trying to do and Coach Barry, our strength coach, Corliss Fingers, they both set me down and just kind of, like you said, explained that to me, that you're no longer one of them, because there's going to be a time in the midst of a game, in the midst of practice, and you want to be able to have that conversation, and you out shooting marbles with them, kicking it with them, playing spades with them. Like, what you mean? Like, I thought we was boys. So they really did help me, and obviously I kind of do that line of understand myself, but I can't speak enough about some of my teammates that really did a really good job of making that transition easy.
That's awesome, man. Well, I say this all the time on the podcast, is like the hardest job you'll get in a profession is those first couple ones, really that first one, but the first couple ones, obviously, to be able to have the opportunity to start early on the student assistant, do a good job with it, probably was an easy promotion within that program. So when you have to start getting out on your own a little bit more, I think that gets interesting. So in 2015, you had the opportunity to go be a GA as a running backs coach with Georgia State. How did you go about getting that job opportunity? What were the steps in the process to get on their radar and go accept that job?
So you know how this profession is. It's just all about knowing people and people knowing you. So Luke Heward, that was the OC at the time at Georgia State, I played for him my first 2 years of high school because my stepdad was coaching for the Seahawks, and I was headed to a high school in Washington called Bellevue High School. I knew nothing. We're just moving to Washington because of his job, and I just read about them in the magazine. They were ranked like top 10 in the country. And with my mom being a teacher, whatever school district she moved into would allow me to go to those high schools. So I was headed to Bellevue. I was going up there, and I was up at a park, and Luke happened to be there. And he was asking me some questions. He was seeing me throwing the ball around. He's like, well, what position you play? I'm like, oh, I'm a quarterback. He's like, where are you going to school? It's like, I'm about to be a freshman at Bellevue. I'm enrolling there. He's like, they're running wing T, right? And I was like, I don't know anything about the school. He's like, well, I'm a high school coach over at Interlake High School, and we're gonna throw the ball around. His brother Brock happened to be on the Seahawks at the time. So I get home, and Stump comes down and is like, yeah, you're not going to Bellevue anymore. You're going to Interlake to go play for Luke. And I was like, all right, cool. So, fast forward, 10 years later, I didn't know that a relationship that started when I was 14 would lead to me getting a phone call like, hey, look, we got a GA spot coming open. And do you want it? And I was like, cool. And he's like, just preparing you with the running backs. I know you've been doing the O-line, but he was like, it's probably going to be your room. And then it worked out. Within like my third month there, I was the running back coach.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize you kind of ended up being the running backs coach there. Now, out of curiosity, how did he know you were in the profession? Did y'all stay in contact over that decade?
Oh, yeah, we stayed in touch. He's he's like family at this point. I mean, we probably talk, once a week, and he was always checking on me even when I was playing, and I would always check on him and follow his career from this place. And anytime I had to make a big decision, he was definitely one of the people that I would call to, give me some advice.
Yeah, so he legitimately kind of knew you were in the profession, gave you a call, so you didn't have to do too much searching. So this wasn't a stressing out, type of situation. It kind of, I don't want to say fell in your lap. Obviously, you had to go do a good job at Southern, but it did almost just kind of present itself to you. Yeah,
I mean, he knew. We kind of talked about it. If there's an opportunity we could work together, I would love to do it. Like I said, because I've known him since I was 14. I think I got to Georgia State at 24. So he just called like, hey, look, this is what the situation is. They had just lost their running back coach, and he was like, do you want it? Like, sure, no interview, anything. I spoke to Coach Miles a little bit on the phone, and the DFO at the time, Sarah Hogan, she called me like, here's some places to live, and I packed up my car and drove from Baton Rouge to Atlanta, and it was, the rest is kind of history.
Yeah. Now, I want to get in the weeds just a little bit, as much as you're willing to share here. You mentioned that you were GA, and it almost transitioned to it transitioned to you being the running back coach. It was your room. You were kind of running the show. Did that show up as job title? Did that show up financially, or was it one of those deals where you were still a graduate assistant, you still had to break down film, you still had to do all that stuff, and then also coach the running backs? Like, what was that kind of blend like?
So my first year, it was true like a legit GA role, but it wasn't my room. Then going into the next year, pay increase, not really. But as far as like responsibility, I was just solely responsible for, just coaching the running backs now because we brought in another GA and now they needed help. Like I'm just that kind of guy. I would do whatever, but
Yeah.
it was legit. You're now the running back coach. This is what it is. All that other stuff. We have people to do it. Your job is to recruit this room, coach this room, and get the best out of it.
How about that? And so, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're within 3 or 4 years of the profession. I mean, you're already a full-time FBS position coach, and I mean that's a lot to take in. Now, were you on the road recruiting as well? Were you doing all those type of responsibilities?
Yeah. So we because it was kind of weird when I was at Georgia State because we had Coach Jagozinski and some stuff came up with him, so he left. So that allowed me to then hit the road recruiting and kind of fill that stuff in. So I was fortunate. I just kind of just fell into a really good situation, and I didn't know anything of it. I just knew I was coming, GA spot. You might be able to get your own room if it works out. But I was just like, hey, look, it gives me a chance to come back home. So I went to Westlake High School. That's probably about 15 minutes from downtown. Okay. So I was like, man, I get a chance to come home. I get to work with Luke. I get to expand my network because I'm working with more people. And I was like, I mean, it just checks a lot of boxes. And then it kind of just fast forward, stuff started falling into place.
Yeah. And what's interesting, I think sometimes when things kind of fall into place, it almost makes the transition a little bit smoother to some of these jobs where you don't have to like put so much pressure on yourself. Like, man, hey, I'm about to start as a full-time coach, but all of a sudden it just falls in your lap and you ain't got no choice but to be ready to do it. Yeah, you just got to run with it. And so did you at any point in time where you like overwhelmed or maybe not prepared? I mean, you didn't play running back. You and that doesn't mean anything. I'm a receiver coach. I didn't play receiver, but I'm saying you didn't play running back. You didn't GA as a running back, but all of a sudden, you're responsible for everyday drills with those dudes, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. How did you prepare yourself and maybe some of the things that you just never done before?
Well, I think the thing that kind of helped me is, my stepdad was, still coaching NFL at the time, and he's been a running back coach. That's the only thing he coached, played running back. Okay. But like I tell everybody, I kind of had to me, one of the greatest guys ever coached the position to lean on. And also, former teammates like Newland Isaac, him and he was a senior when I was a freshman at Charleston Southern. He had been coaching running backs. Now I get to bounce ideas off him. And then we had Tim Lopano that was on the staff. He had coached running backs at Cal and, coached running backs in the NFL. So another person. Then I also had Coach Miles. Coach Miles had coached running backs at Notre Dame, Stanford, and a few other places. So I was surrounded by a lot of people that had a lot of knowledge and a lot of information that I could just pick their brain anytime I felt like, what to do next. So, I was fortunate. I was blessed.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Well, obviously you do a great job there. And in 2017, it turns into an opportunity to come back to your alma mater and be the running backs coach. Mm-hmm. Once again, just out of curiosity, once again, these transitions are always huge on this podcast. How did that job come about? And why did you decide, or, was the staff let go at Georgia State? I can't remember the timeline there at that point in time, but how did you end up leaving Georgia State to go back to Southern?
Yeah, so we got let go at the end of the 2016 season. I think Coach Miles got let go within, we had 2 games left, and we kind of knew that was the end of it. So once again, I kept in touch with Coach Berry, Coach Odoms, and their running back coach there, Coach Joseph, was also another mentor of mine. Had to have knee surgery, and he was just like, he's a former NFL guy. I think he was on his 3rd or 4th knee surgery. He's like, yeah, it's time for me to move on. I just can't keep up.
Yeah.
So he was like, hey, Reid, this is going to be my last year. If you're interested in coming back, let me know. I'll go talk to Coach O and Coach Berry. And, so I talked to them. They interviewed me at the convention, and, they hired me. So, I was out of work probably about, 2 months, but it was a stressful time. But at the same time, they say you never really coach until you get fired. So I felt like I'm glad I kind of got it out the way early. So I've been through it, and right. So no, it was a fortunate situation that I was able to kind of land right back where I started.
Yeah. Now, it's funny you say that. You just got it out the way, huh? You just went ahead and checked that box off.
No doubt. No doubt.
You mentioned interviewing at the convention, which anytime somebody plugs, the job, job hunt and all that kind of stuff with the convention. I just love to hear it because I think that is a part of the convention that, it's not really broadcasting on our half. We're trying to do education and create the networking piece. But heck, I did 2 interviews at a convention as a coach myself, so I recognize that happens there. Now this is your first probably true interview at this point in time, and I don't even know if it's the full all out deal as you spent some time there at Southern already. But how did that go down? Were you guys in a hotel room? What kind of questions were they asking?
We were in one of the meeting rooms.
Okay.
I can't remember which one, so we just snuck in there and it was available. And it was a legit interview. Like Coach Berry told me, like, yeah, we're going to interview you. We want to see, how you've grown over the past 2 years and that kind of stuff. And it wasn't a shoe in for the job. So, I really, really prepared for the interview, and I thought I was going to be able to have video up and all this kind of stuff. And there was no computer in there. It was just a pen and a board and let's talk. So, I got on there, but, I think Coach Berry was pleased because he could see the growth in me. And, it kind of worked out that way. So it was legit, full on interview. I came suited and booted, and I didn't take anything for chance. So I was like, man, I need a job. I'm going to go get this one.
Yeah. Yeah. Now when, once again, we'll go through this chronologically, but just answer this question for me here. Now, since then, have you done any interviews since then, any of these other jobs? I know we're going to get to it, but have you interviewed in any of these other jobs along the way?
Yes. So, yes, sir, I have.
Okay. So on any of those other interviews, did you do your, a PowerPoint presentation, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So definitely for the head coaching job, I definitely had
I had to go through that.
Went through that, yes, sir. And then even at my current job, I interviewed for it as well. Okay.
So I the point of me asking you that question, once again, we'll get to those when they arise here. And the story is like, I have seen guys, I've been on staffs where guys, talking about the interview process and was like, man, he came in here and had all this stuff, and I put him on the board and he couldn't draw a circle correctly, or he could do all the stuff on the board, and then when it was time to use the huddle or the whatever video equipment they got, he couldn't really direct. How important is it to make sure that you are prepared any type of way? Because like you said, you walked in there ready with some film and there was no way to use it, so you had to get up on the board and probably stand up and get in stances and all that kind of stuff. So how important is it to make sure that you can cover all your bases when you're walking into an interview?
I think it's very important, and I would tell anybody to if you're recruiting, walking through these high schools, man, talk to some of these teachers, because then I think that's one of the things that benefited me was being a son of an educator, and you learn how to teach, because most people just want to find out how can you get this information to the kids, because if you're a good enough coach, they can teach you the scheme, but if you can't get it to your players and help them execute it, then you're no good. So I think, man, asking those questions is, talking to people that sit in the classrooms all day and they're teaching hundreds of kids is like, because all kids are different. Like, how do you relate to this kid that maybe is a hands-on learner, but you also got a kid in the class that's a visual learner? So, I think I kind of honed those skills, and I would tell anybody, and if you really want to move in this profession, make sure you're a really good teacher. Nobody cares about X and O's because they can teach you that. Like, can you convey the information to your players and have them maximize their potential?
Absolutely. Well put, man. Now, kind of getting back on track here. So you go and do this interview here at Southern, you get the job. Now, just the question I have about your Southern stop is, you got to experience it as a player. You got to experience it as a student coach. You got to experience it as a young graduate assistant, wet behind the ears, trying to figure the profession out. And you come back, and now you're a full-time position coach. You got your own room. You got your own this. You got your own that. What those different stages of Southern, those different stages of Coach Sanders, how would you describe them, and ultimately leading up to that full-time job?
I grew so much in between that time. And the funny thing about it is, so when I left, 2014 was my last year. So all those incoming freshmen that played that 14 fall were now seniors. So being able to see their growth, and then being able to see me from O-line GA now to coming back as a running back coach, it was fun. So, obviously I grew a lot within those 2 years, and they grew a lot. So I was excited to be back and show them how much I had grown, because I was really close to that recruiting class, because that was, I helped get them there. And that was like my first time being a graduate assistant and being like really immersed into, the coaching profession. So watching them, seeing them, and like, man, let's go finish this off. Like, because we lost in 2014 in SWAC championship, So for it to come full circle and have a chance to then go win it with the same guys that you lost it with as freshmen, it was a great experience. Yeah.
That's awesome. So that thing really did come full circle.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this question. I never had the opportunity to coach here at my alma mater. Your AFCA is based in Waco. I played at Baylor, and it's just interesting. And this question will make sense after I explain this in a second. But when I was a player, just like any football program across the country, we were in that locker room. We were going to go 12-0 and win a national championship, and we were going to win the Big 12 every single year. And around that time frame, I was at Baylor. We weren't very good. We were kind of cellar dwellers for the most part, and it was like that for a while. As a player, you just don't really recognize why, and you want to put it on all these other different reasons as a player. But then all of a sudden, as I got into the profession, I started realizing the impact of facilities, the impact of locality, the impact of resources that you have within that program. I would look at my alma mater and say, okay, this is the issues that we were having. I just didn't really recognize that, or this is why Baylor's successful now, because they maybe changed some of the stuff up. As you look at Southern more as from that coach perspective, what did you see like differently in terms of what made that program special enough for you guys to be able to compete almost all the time, for a SWAC championship, to be in that hunt all the time?
I think Coach Odoms did a really good job of understanding what we didn't have, and he didn't sugarcoat it. Like, I think our facilities were good, were they great? No, but what we really did a good job of is, I think, the mental aspect of it. Like, we kind of read a book as a coaching staff. We were visiting La Tech, and I think Coach Holtz made the staff read Chopwood, Carry Water. So then Coach Odoms liked it and made us come back and read Chopwood, Carry Water. So as we read it as a staff, then we read it as a team. So I think that kind of gave us an advantage because, in the Louisiana HBCU football, I mean, it's either Southern or Grambling. And at that time, we were kind of on the rise. We won it in 13, came back and lost in 14, and they were on a really good run.
Right.
So getting kids wasn't an issue. Like Coach Odom's like, hey, look, if you want to stay in the Taj Mahal when it comes to dorms, that's just not what it's going to be. But you want to come to a place where we don't care about you. He used to have this thing. He's hilarious. And he was like, man, we got more thighs than Popeye. So, he's a funny guy. Like, man, you want to have a really good time. Being on the bluff is great. You're 60 miles from New Orleans. So he really sold what we did have. Right. And we really didn't get caught up in what we didn't have. And we were able to get really good talented kids in there, some that are, still playing on Sundays to this day. And, we were able to just, keep winning games. So I think that was the big thing. Coach Owens did a really good job of just maximizing what we did have and not getting caught up in, what we were lacking.
Amen. Well, in 2018, you make a big transition. You step away from the college game to go be a high school coach at a really good program there in Louisiana at St. Augustine High School, as in St. Aug, if you're from around there. Go to St. Aug as the OC. What was the decision-making process to go be an offensive coordinator and maybe go to the high school level?
So I knew I wanted to. So my end goal has always been a head coach, trying to be a college head coach, and I kind of didn't want to fall into the pigeonhole of always just being known as a running back coach, because you know how it is.
Yeah.
The progression is usually position coach, coordinator, head coach, and I was like, if it probably isn't St. Aug, I probably don't even consider. But I'm like, hey, look, it's when it comes to branding, probably top 10 in the country. Yeah. When it comes to Louisiana high school football, once again, you're probably top 5 in the state. I had a chance to, work for a really good head coach in Nate Jones, but it's also a chance for me to, once again, check another box, for me to grow, get a chance to be a offensive coordinator, because everybody thinks they can do it, but can you? You don't really know until you sit in that seat.
That's right.
And, and for me, it was like, yeah, it might be high school, but if anyone ever asked, have you coordinated before? The answer is yes, you can. Now, you might say, well, it wasn't at the college level, but at least that box was checked. And once again, it gave me a chance to grow, learn. And I think Coach Jones did a really good job with that. Like I tell everybody, I was better year 2 than I was year 1. And there was just some stuff that, I'm a huge planner. Some stuff you just have to learn from sitting in the seat. And then, I started some of the conversations Coach Barry and I used to have. They started to make sense because you it doesn't make sense until you are the coordinator. And then it doesn't make sense until you are the head coach about some of the decisions and things that you have to do. So, because I'm all about learning, and it required me to, one, trust in myself, trust in my faith, because, I am making a detour. Some people are like, hey, look, you get out, it's going to be tough to get back in. And I was like, well, no, I'm going to bet on myself. And it was a great league that we were in. Gabe Fertitta, that's at Florida State, was the head coach at Catholic, and we were battling it out. So, it was some really good football, and you had to coach. It wasn't just, like some high schools where you just get away with talent. Like, everybody had talent and everybody had really good coaches.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a hotbed of really good players and really good coaches, man. I can certainly attest to that. Now, over those 3 years, you mentioned being better in year 2 than you were in year 1. Where did you go to tap in to maybe get better? I know experience obviously plays a huge part in just being in some of those situations and just knowing how to execute better, but more from a schematic standpoint, where were you tapping into to make sure that you were maximizing your talent?
I mean, I would talk to anybody that would talk to me. I didn't care if it was a middle school football coach, whoever. So, I would get in the car, go visit people. I would call people. I would always go visit Luke. He was at Sac State at the time. So I would go out there and go visit him, and they did some really good things, and that was the best thing about it. At high school, you just don't have access to all the film. So, you go spend a week at a college, and you can just lock yourself in a room, get on Exos, and pull up almost anything that you want. So, I would bring my notepad, bring the teams that I want to study, and find somebody who would open their doors to me, and I would just, study as much as I could. And then if I could make a connection, all right, well, I'm studying, LSU, who do I know that might know somebody here that can kind of answer some of those questions that I can't get from watching the film? So I'm a big resource guy. Like, I don't believe in the answer no. Like, I'm a figure it out, and I think that's probably coming from working at high schools and being at HBCU where we didn't have anything. We didn't make excuses. If we needed something, either we were going to build it if we couldn't buy it, or we're going to find another way to do it. So that's just kind of always in my mindset as a coach is, and I'm going to figure it out. Like, I know if I go through my phone and bug enough people, somebody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody that can get me an answer. And then, I would go to visit, NFL teams, wherever my stepdad was at the time. I would go out there and spend, a week with him. He was with the Jets when I was at St. Aug. So, I went and spent a week and a half with them, and same thing, just talk ball and more so listen, ask questions, and lock myself in the room with a computer and try to watch as much ball as I could.
Yeah. You mentioned your stepdad quite a bit here on the podcast and his long career in the NFL. I kind of want to try to make the connection here. You said you visited him while you were an offensive coordinator, and I'm sure some of the other stops as a high school coach. When you go and look at the game and look at the detail that they're able to get into and their past concepts, the packages they're able to carry into games, just how massive some of those things can get. And then you look at high school, and obviously there's some high school coaches that obviously carry extensive packages and can do some of the same stuff. When you walk into that program, what are you trying to take away to go help your players? You know what I'm saying? From a conceptual standpoint that can apply from both high school all the way up to college and vice versa. High school all the way up to the professional level and vice versa.
Well, the first thing for me was, can we execute it? And I think that's kind of the fine line is you can go visit all these places, but if your player just physically can't do it, right, well, now we're spinning our wheels. So now it's like being intentional. Like, our players are really good at this concept. Well, let me go find how many different ways that we can now run this concept. So maybe I might not have access to it, but you go visit enough places, they might window dress this thing out of 14 different formations, and now you're just bringing that back. So I think I did a really good job of being intentional about what we did. And, I grew up in the West Coast system. That's what I ran when I played for Luke. Yeah. So that's kind of all I know. So, a lot of people are like, man, those kids can't learn that. I'm like, no, my mom's in education since I was like 5. Like, right, they'll learn what you can teach them. And, some people are like, man, that's too much. And I'm like, man, look, I never gave the quarterback protection. Like, I felt like I wanted you to have a chalk last. So you call your own protections, but it was all about what can I teach them? So that also forced me to always be a better teacher. Because not only did I want to grow X's and O's, I would go meet with some of the whoever won teacher of the year. I mean, how are you doing this? How are you getting all these kids to pass all these standardized tests and they're excelling in your class? Like, because the classroom management was the easy part. I didn't have any behavioral issues, but like, how are you reaching all these kids that come from all these different demographics? And I'm like, tell me that as well.
That's right, man. I got a big smile on my face because you mentioned West Coast offense, and that was like, I don't want to say baptism by fire, but my first college job was my coordinator was a West Coast guy, and I came from Air Raid where it's 91. Mm-hmm. We running the play right there. It's 95. Okay, cool. And man, it was so much for me to take in, but that made I've said this on this podcast probably 20 times, 30 times, it made me the best coach, best version of myself for sure, to be able to understand and look at football like that and compartmentalize different pieces, and then to go in a room and something I struggled in learning at least immediately, and probably had that same negative mindset, like, man, it's gonna be hard to teach those kids, man. You approach them the right way, and you present it the right way, and you take the time to get to know the kid, to know what type of learner that they are. Man, I mean, the sky's the limit what these young people can digest and take and run with, man. So I love that you pointed that out, man. And so, after your 3 years there at St. Aug, you have a very quick stay out in Cali at Capital Christian High School. You're the offensive coordinator again, quarterbacks coach. Long way from home, although you were in Cali for a little bit when you were in college as a player at Saddleback Community College. What led you to go out to Cali? What was that whole process about?
So my daughter was going to be born. So and I was like, man, I'm coaching high school. I can coach high school football anywhere.
Yeah.
So, I moved out there, and it was, middle of the pandemic. She was born December of 19. And, we had been doing long distance. And then, so I was like, man, I'm coaching high school football. I'm coming out there. And then, COVID hit. So I'm working at St. Aug remotely until the end of the school year, because I was still, I was teaching in the building. And then they weren't having football in California because they had a spring season in 2021. So, I was just out there like, man, what I'm going to do. And, my granddad is military, and I owe a lot of my success to him, just, for the mindset that he kind of instilled in me. But, we just didn't believe in just sitting around. Like, you got to do something. Men and our family work. So I was like, man, I'm going to go work at UBS. That's the closest thing where I can feel like I'm a part of a team. So, I went and interviewed for a supervisor job, and I was doing it because I was like, man, I just want to be close to my family. I don't know what football is gonna hold for me, but I'm here. I'm enjoying being a dad, and I met a guy, and the guy was like, man, someone told me you used to be a football coach, and I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, you ever thought about coaching? And this guy was a youth league coach, and I was like, sure, like, connect me with whoever. He's like, well, send me your resume, and I'm gonna give it to somebody. And then I got a phone call from a guy that was like a well-known referee in the area for high school sports. And it's like, well, I know somebody at Capital Christian is looking for a coach. And I was like, man, tell him I'm in. So I went and met with him, a guy by the name of Saul Patu. And I was just coming in and just helping out. Like I told him, I had no expectations. I just want to be around ball. And, and it led to me becoming an offensive coordinator. And we had a heck of a year, and I was fortunate to coach a great quarterback by the name of Anthony Garcia. And, that kid was spectacular. So I owe a lot of him of the credit, because he, my okay play calls turned to great plays because he was back there. So, it always boils down to the players. And then that's just kind of how I got to California, got that gig. I just bumped into a guy when I was working at UPS, and it kind of led to that opportunity.
Now, we talk about on the podcast a lot about transitions from college to college, or college maybe back to high school, or college to the NFL. One thing that we don't really talk a lot about is transitioning from high school to high school outside of state lines. And, this probably be the first time we've ever maybe discussed it, although I know I've had people do it before. What were some of the issues / roadblocks that come from I know, like in Texas, you have to have a certain type of teaching certificate, and if you come from out of state, you got to do certain things in order to get that certificate up to date. Was there any of those type of headaches? I don't know if that's the right word for it, but were there any of those type of issues in terms of being a Louisiana teacher, getting to California, being a teacher / coach?
No, I didn't really, because I went from private to private. So at both those schools,
Okay.
you had a master degree. Like you didn't have to be a certified teacher. So it kind of worked out. And then so when I left St. Aug's and I go to Capital Christian, they're like, "Oh, you have an MBA?" And I was like, yeah, I went to school for business, but I just so you know, I've only coached football since I've been out of college. Like, but they kind of put me in the admin business department, and so that was kind of like my day job, and then also coach football.
Okay. I got you. Well, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And now, after 1 year, kind of ripping it up offensively, in 22, you get the opportunity at Rio Americano High School to be the head ball coach. How did that opportunity arise? Why did you seek it? How did you seek it? And yeah, how did it all go down?
Like I said earlier, like I always wanted to be a head coach. So once again, I had been on several interviews. I think I interviewed for 4 different times before I finally got told yes. So, that would be my advice for anyone. I'm not a cocky person, but being told no doesn't deter me from going after what I want. Like, so, I would I would interview, don't get the job. And I'm like, well, what did I do wrong? I was like, can you give me any kind of feedback? And I'm taking notes. Like, I'm trying to remember as many questions as they ask me. So I'm kind of trying to hone my skills, because that's kind of how my granddad is. He's a no excuse kind of guy. So we ain't going to cry over spilt milk, make excuses. So I think that was my 5th interview and I got told yes. And it's funny how God works, because on paper, that's probably wasn't the job that I wanted. There was a high school out not too far from where we lived called Intercom High School. And to me, that was my ideal job. And I came runner-up, came second. And the head coach was like, man, the principal told me you had a great interview, but, they told me that they wanted somebody that had head coaching experience. I'm like, cool, I get it. But he was like, well, I want you to come be my offensive coordinator. And I was like, I think I'm going to just, and I had the Rio interview coming up. Then they told me yes. And Rio was a dumpster fire when I got it. But my thing was, and I tell anybody that's interviewing, and I'm sure it's probably the same from college, if administrators are supportive and they're willing to give you what you need to be successful, and everything else is just water underneath the bridge. Like you can figure it out. Because my athletic director and my principal, they were like, hey, look, we want a successful football program. What do we need to do? And I was like, are you serious, or are you just saying it? Because it's easy to say it, but now it's time to pony up the money and they don't want to do it. And I'm like, so this is what you really want? Because I'm telling you now, these are my expectations. And if you give me what I need, we'll go do it. And that's kind of how it happened. I interviewed for it, and I actually had a college gig waiting on me, and I called them because they were taking a slow time. I was like, look, I got a gig, and it was at Arkansas Pine Bluff. And I was like, look, they offered me the quarterback job, and I need to let them know by tomorrow. So I'm either getting on the plane to go to Arkansas Pine Bluff to be the quarterback coach, or you're hiring me to be their head coach. And I was like, yeah, don't get on the plane. You're our new head coach. And I was like, well, let's go to work.
and to work, you guys went. Kind of mentioned it being a dumpster fire. They had one win in the season prior to your rising. You guys finished up with the most league wins in a decade, and actually made it to the 2023 state playoffs. I mean, just such a short time with just not a lot of experience maybe to lean on. Sometimes I feel like sometimes that can be a good thing, where you can kind of just fly by the seat of your pants and excuse the analogy there, because I'm sure you're probably a little bit more buttoned up than flying by the seat of your pants, but just being able to make decisions on the fly and not have to, this is what I did when I was the head coach there. You were able to be creative in that process. How were you able to turn that program around so quickly?
So I had a plan and I stuck to it. And I think that was probably the most important thing. I hired really good people, and my thing was, and if I'm ever, afforded the opportunity to be a college head coach, I'm going to think the same way, man. Look, once again, I don't care about how much football you know. Are you a good person? Are you willing to do what it takes to be successful? Because once again, we can go learn football. And if you're confident enough, we can teach you the X and O's. But I want to be surrounded with good people. And I think I did a really good job of that. And I think what I gave them, I sat down with every coach I interviewed and every coach that said they wanted to work for me. Like, what do you want? Like, if you want to be a head coach, you want to be a coordinator, like, what do you want? 'Cause I used to tell them, this is what I want. Like, I want to be a collegiate head coach one day. Don't help me reach my goals and I can't turn around and help you. So I think, I bought some I bought some loyalty with guys because they knew I was willing to give them whatever task they needed to also help them progress their career, and which means they were really willing to run through a wall for me. So, when it was time to put those long hours in, and I know my last year, because I had a son in June, we were going at 5 a.m. We were hitting the practice field at 5 a.m. and, that's when we were taking roll and getting started. So all the kids had to be there at 4:30. So I'm asking guys that, have other jobs and that kind of stuff to, wake up early with families, and they were willing to do it. And I think that was the biggest thing, is just investing in the people, not only the coaches, but the players, the community, because the same kids that we won 3 games with in 2022 are the exact same kids that we came around and won 9 games with the following year.
Yeah. Now, the thing you started off with there was the first thing that you would do is, or the first thing that you did was put good people around you. You hired good coaches. Now, I think, trying to make sure I say this in the right way. I think at the collegiate level, I can pick the phone up and be anywhere in the country and say, "Hey, Coach Sanders, what's up, bro? I got a running back's job for you. It's going to pay you a little bit more than you're making. It's a little, whatever it is that might entice you." And I can kind of get guys that I've worked with, get guys that, that I like or respect in the industry. But in high school, sometimes like you couldn't call the running backs coach at St. Aug and say, "Hey man, come on out to Cali, bro. I got a job for you." Right. So when you're kind of, I don't want to say more restricted to the local area, but it is in some fashion kind of like that. How are you able to go and make sure that you're able to find the right guys? And I'm assuming a lot of those guys you never worked with before.
Yeah, so the first thing I did was sit down with the current staff and told them, look, anybody that wants to stay, I'm willing to keep you if you're willing to do the work. So I'm not coming in here and firing anybody. Some people walked away, some guys stayed. So at least I kind of had a foundation. And it's funny that you said that. My offensive line coach at St. Aug, he stayed in New Orleans, and I got this job, and I was like, time. So he packed up and moved from Louisiana, came to California. So I knew if I had that position, shored up. And how I met him when I was at GA, he was a player for myself and Coach Barry. And I was like, I told him, whenever I get a chance, I'm gonna hire you one day. And it kind of worked out. So he did come, but like you said, the high school level, especially in states like California, where I was like one of 2 football coaches in the building. Everybody else they get their money from their day job. So you got to really find people that are passionate about, coaching football. And I think I did a really good job with finding those people.
Yeah, sure did, man. Turn that thing around. And then, it's about the time I met you here in January. I shook your hand as the head ball coach at Rio Americano, and then I think I said goodbye to you as the head coach or as the running backs coach at West Georgia. It was kind of that quick.
Yeah.
You make a transition, kind of get back closer to home, get back at the collegiate level. What was that whole process about in terms of you making the transition? And you can also add in there how you got on their radar and what the process was like in order to get the job.
You know how it is. You kind of put those fillers out, at the end of the year, and I knew I want to get back in college, and also, but now you talk about having a family. I can't just leave for any job anymore. I got 2 little kids, like, and childcare ain't cheap. So, you got to think about that kind of stuff. And, so I had big getting opportunities, every year somebody would call. Like, I'm really good friends with the head coach of Kentucky State. When he got the job, "Hey, Reid, man, I want to bring you on and I was just like, just not right now, just not the great time. I just, had my son. I was like, man, I can't up and move right now, but Newland Isaac, I was talking to him. He's like, "Man, look, dude, you call me every year." And he's like, "At some point, you got to take one of these jobs." And kind of small world, I don't know how Newland knew Coach Taylor, but, one of their analysts interviewed for the OC job at West Georgia. Now, he didn't end up getting it, but, he was like, well, he wanted to bring me. So Newland was like, "Look, we got a guy who's going to interview, and I knew Malcolm from meeting him through Newland, and Malcolm didn't get the job, and I texted him like, do you mind at least hitting Coach Taylor up, see if he would still interview me, because he was still looking for a running back coach, and he shot Coach Taylor a text, and Coach Taylor was like, "Yeah, I'll interview the guy," and they interviewed me, and it kind of worked out, and I didn't know Coach Taylor from a can of paint. I didn't know the Coach Stevens from the can of paint. It was just one of those things that a relationship that I built in 2008 as a freshman in college kind of paid dividends, a few years later, 12 years. Yeah. So it kind of worked out.
Well, that's crazy. I mean, I think it is known in the business. Obviously, the networking is a huge part, but I mean, your entryway into the business, your first job outside of being at your alma mater at Georgia State was a guy that you had known as a high school coach a decade prior to that, and then obviously this is another relationship that extends way back to early in your life. Ultimately ends up to you getting to this job of a staff of guys that you don't know.
Right.
When all of a sudden you take a job and you don't know anybody, what are you looking for when you walk into that building? You don't have that many expectations, or maybe did you reach out and call people and say, hey man, what is head ball coach like? What is the OC like? Or did you just kind of go in there and get a feel for everything?
I did. I called a few people, and I just felt like I knew Newland would put me in a bad situation.
Yeah.
So I just from our relationship, if he's like maybe a good dude, I knew he was a good dude. But then my phone started ringing like, oh, hey, look, I just got a call from Coach Taylor. He asking me about you, and I was like, oh man, small world. I didn't know you knew him. And then so I think he was connecting dots, and I was connecting dots. I got a call from my boy, Addison, because Addison and I went to high school together at Westlake. He's down at UCF right now. So I just got on the phone with Coach Taylor. He called me asking about you. So I was like, these people that I trust, that I'm really close to, if they saying he's a good dude, then he's a good dude. Because I know they wouldn't put me in a bad situation. And
right.
And I guess Coach Stevens called Luke because they talked because they had a similar opponent one time, and I think Luke was at A&M or something like that, or maybe they crossed paths somehow. And Kerry Colbert is a mentor of mine, and Dane and Kerry worked together at SC. And Kerry called me, was like, man, let's go on the phone with Coach Stevens. So once you have that many people that you respect and that have been nothing but good to you, you're like, oh well, I'm in good hands. So when I met him, it was like we just picked up. Like I had known these guys for years.
Right. That's good, man. And that's important too. I think obviously sometimes when you can get a job that you feel like is better or something that you want, it's easy just to say yeah. But I mean, that's something that I think is important for our coaches to know is, I mean, you spend so much time with these guys on staff, right. So it's important to make sure that you do your homework so you just know what kind of guys you're dealing with, and you can know what you're walking yourself into. Now, I did mention you were part of the 3535 at the beginning of the podcast, and you were part of this most recent class here in 24. Just talk to us a little bit about why that was a good program in your eyes and why coaches should be motivated and encouraged to apply for it.
For me, it was just the networking opportunity. I think you did a good job bringing in the speakers, and even the little stuff when we were talking about the financial aspect, and we're moving around. Like, well, how do you set up retirement? How do you do this when you're going from school to school? It doesn't always transfer. So all those little nuggets were just outstanding. But also, I'm sitting next to 34 other guys, and 34 other guys that now I feel like my network has grown 34 new people. And, now we're building relationships. Like, we're texting each other. We got a group chat. So it's like, that's the biggest thing. Because to me, it's kind of like a fraternity. Now you're in. Now anyone else that's been in it, they've been nothing but willing to just open the doors to talk to me. Whereas before, maybe they don't give me the time of the day. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But now it's like, oh, I saw you one of us now. And what do you need? Call me if you need this. It's like, so now you're building those personal relationships. And I think, and you know how this profession is. It's all about who knows you and who you know. So, being able to, sit in there, hear those speakers, but also gave you a little motivation. Seeing guys that were like, look, I was sitting in those seats 5-6 years ago, and now I'm here. And, just kind of let you know to just keep going. And, God kind of has a plan for you, and just keep working because, your time is coming. And I was shocked, and I had to kind of, pinch myself. My grandma had to just, I didn't realize it. I see the list. You're like, you're the only high school coach on there, but it's just like, well, I got work to do. I'm trying to interview for this gig, but taking the chance to like just pause, I'm like, man, that's huge because I'm looking through the names. It's like LSU, Iowa State, and then you see little old Real Americano High School. So I'm like, man, I must have been doing something right, man. God is working wonders in my life. So, and it was a blessing. I would tell anybody, man, to apply. It's great. It's great. The mixer was great. Meeting people that, and, listen to people that you think. Like, now I get to, you hear about the go-go often. Man, he's right here. I bumped into Coach Golish at the Mercer Mega Camp. It's like he spoke to us at the 35 and the 35. So just being able to now feel like, oh, I can approach you and have a conversation because now we have a common thing.
For sure, man. Well, I would appreciate you being a part of it and elevating that program for us, man. I've enjoyed this hour, man. You've had a fantastic career. I know the best is yet to come, man. And I know people are going to want to keep up with this journey for sure. So before we get off with you, if you don't mind just dropping your social media, your Twitter account or whatnot, and just I forgot to follow and keep up with you.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me on. My Twitter is RTS_9. So yeah, thank you. I enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for everything that you done for me. You're doing for the profession. And like I said, man, I enjoyed that day. It was outstanding. I learned a lot, and so I appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot, man, and best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you in 25. All right, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Later.
All right, sure.
CoachComm has been delivering tough headsets for tough teams for more than 31 years. It's why 97% of FBS teams and thousands of high schools across the country rely on CoachComm. Get the best for your team. Visit CoachComm.com for more info.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm. If you'd like to learn more about this week's episode, head over to AFCA.com. There, you can access every episode and find corresponding show notes. Remember, you can catch every episode of Inside the Headset, presented by CoachComm, on wherever you get your podcasts, including Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. While you're there, we'd love for you to take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Your feedback helps us improve and grow. Keep up with the latest news by following us on social media. Connect with us at Inside the Headset, and remember to tag us when you share your favorite episodes. For more updates on all things AFCA, be sure to follow the @WeAreAFCA social media accounts. If you're not a part of the AFCA community yet, visit AFCA.com to join thousands of NFL, college, and high school coaches nationwide and across the globe. Elevate your coaching game with an AFCA membership. You'll gain exclusive access to the annual AFCA convention, magazine, digital library, and AFCA Insider email. Stay up to date with the latest stories and news on the AFCA website. More than just a convention, the AFCA offers continuous education, guidance, networking, and more. Celebrate the past and shape the future with the AFCA. It's about fostering exceptional coaches who create outstanding teams and even better individuals. Invest in your skills and make a lasting impact today by engaging with the AFCA. Your journey starts here.